We are here with 7th District candidate for Congress, Al Krulick, incumbent Republican John Mica was invited and initially confirmed and then canceled because his staff told us he had a congressional hearing that he needed to fill in on. So we're glad to have Mr. Krulick here. Mr. Krulick, if you've watched these before, you know that we ask candidates a couple of questions to open the interviews.
Okay.
We do background checks on all of our candidates. We did a background check on you and didn't see anything that came up on the background check, but just in case, because sometimes things don't come up. Have you been arrested before?
No.
Okay. Have you ever declared bankruptcy?
Nope.
Okay.
Never had enough money to declare bankruptcy.
Okay. If you could start by telling us why you're seeking this office.
Well, I'm clearly seeking this office because there are issues that I care deeply about. I'm very interested in promoting what the Constitution has suggested as the general welfare. And we have an incumbent congressperson whose votes in Congress and political career do not meet the standards that I expect from my representative in the People's House. And I decided that I would put my hat into the ring to promulgate the issues that I care about and to offer an alternative to the incumbent.
If you could get into some details about votes that Congressman Mica has taken that have, as you said, not been consistent with the constitutional obligation of promoting the general welfare.
Well, first let me just say this. You know, I consider this a job application. Every 2 years, the Constitution gives the people of the district an opportunity to hire someone who's going to represent them in the House of Representatives. And as a job application, I have made it my policy not to talk about the other applicants from the job as much as possible. Clearly, there is a difference of opinion between me and Mr. Mica on many issues, but I always found it more important to speak to the people about what I think is important, why they should hire me as their representative. So, you know, I prefer to talk about myself. I wish Mr. Mica had shown up to defend his own votes and his own record, but clearly he's decided that informing the public via this media was not that important. I think it shows a certain disrespect for the community that he represents and a certain disrespect for the press.
Well, then let's go that route. Let's talk about the issues that are important to you, and let's see if they dovetail into some of Mr. Mica's deficiencies.
Okay.
What are the issues that are important?
Well, there are a lot of issues that are important to me. The first issue that's important to me is, I think, the most important existential threat we have to our society, our nation, and our planet, and it's the global warming, climate change due to the continued burning of fossil fuels, which are raising the temperature of the planet, raising sea levels, and threaten to turn our habit into an inhabitable sphere. Mr. Mica is on record as not believing that climate change is due to human activity. He does not agree with the 97% of the world's climate scientists. He clearly does not agree with the congressionally mandated National Climate Assessment, which just came out and this past May, and said that we are literally experiencing the effects of climate change right now, and that these effects are profound, and that we're going to see more droughts, more heat, more violent storms over the next many years, and we need to do something about it. Just yesterday, Secretary of Defense Hagel has come out with decision to implement changes in the Pentagon policy, because they too understand that climate change is real and it's happening. And to be a climate change denier in 2014, when all of the scientific evidence points in only one direction, is irresponsible. And Mr. Mica is a climate change denier. Now, you will note that most of the information on the other side is not scientific, somewhat duplicitous, and if you follow the money, you'll generally see that it comes from the oil companies or their affiliates. And these people have been controlling the debate and controlling the United States Congress for many, many years. So when you take money from the fossil fuel industry, you're going to do their bidding. And Mr. Mica has been doing their bidding for his entire political career, and that's irresponsible. Another issue, the war on drugs. It's been an absolute abject failure for 40 years. We're putting people in jail for the crime of smoking marijuana to the tune of 500,000 people a year. We're spending $40 billion a year, combined federal and state money, prosecuting people. We're clogging the court systems. We are denying people their constitutional rights. Prohibition does not work. Prohibition itself is the cause of crime, not the drug use itself. Mr. Mica has gone on record as being a drug warrior. And again, here's where we disagree. He does not believe in medical marijuana, and he thinks that the status quo is just fine, and I disagree heartily. Campaign finance reform is another issue. I ran on this issue 18 years ago when I first ran for Congress. We have become an oligarchy. We are no longer a democracy where one man, one vote rules the day. And this is not a liberal issue. You can read David Stockman's latest book, The Great Deformation. Stockman was a conservative congressman from Michigan and the head of Ronald Reagan's budget office. And in his book, he writes that our government has become, quote, a tyranny of incumbency and money politics. And he believes that we need to get all the private money out of political campaigns, and we need to overturn Citizens v. United, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. Obviously, Mr. Mica, who gets 85% of his campaign money from out of the district, is just appreciative of the status quo, because this is how incumbents work. They get money from the special interests year after year to finance their endless campaigns, and then they go to the halls of Congress and do their bidding. Healthcare. Mr. Mica voted with his Republican colleagues 56 times to repeal Obamacare. Obamacare is working. 8 million people have signed up in their first year. The Congressional Budget Office itself has said that Obamacare will reduce the deficit by $1.7 trillion over the next 20 years. The Republican majority in the House of Representatives has done nothing but obstruct without any intelligent replacement. I believe that Obamacare is the first step. I think we have to go to national comprehensive single-payer health insurance. We are the only industrialized democracy on planet Earth that does not have some sort of national health care for all of its citizens. Right now, 31% of our citizenry gets health care through the government programs, Medicare, Medicaid, and the Veterans Administration, or the DOD. 48% private insurance through our employers. 5% private and 15% still uninsured. Now that worked for a while, but it doesn't work anymore. The idea that we get our health insurance through our employers was simply an accident of history. 1942, Congress passed the Stabilization Act limiting wage increases for workers during wartime. So in order to keep and get labor in the labor market, which was tight because of World War II, employers offered benefits like health insurance, which got around the Stabilization Act. In 1943, Congress allowed those health benefits to be tax deductible. It worked. It worked for many years. By the 1960s, 70% of our population was insured through the workplace, ESI, employer-sponsored insurance. But between 2001 and 2011, the costs have doubled. The premiums have doubled for individuals. The premiums have gone up 125% for families. We spend almost $8,000 per capita a year on health care. 18% of our GDP goes to health care, and we're 17th in terms of services received. The system does not work. We need to get for-profit hospitals, we need to get the pharmaceutical company and the insurance companies out of the healthcare business. Healthcare is a right, not a privilege. the vast majority of bankruptcies in our country every year are due to medical bills that cannot be paid. Let's just finally join the rest of the civilized world. Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Dwight D. Eisenhower, John Kennedy, Richard Nixon, Bill Clinton, all of them proposed some sort of national health insurance, which has always been stymied by the cabal, the insurance companies, the pharmaceutical companies, and for-profit hospitals. What other issues do I care about? I don't know, you ask me some specifics. We're making $41 billion a year profit on our student loans. We're taxing an entire generation and saddling them with unmanageable debt. Why is the United States government making a profit off of our next generation? Don't we understand that education is important? We need to invest in it. Right now, Germany has declared free tuition for every college student in the country because they understand that making that investment is good for their future. We need to do the same thing. Finally, another issue, obviously, that's associated with climate change. We need to transition from a fossil fuel-based economy to one based on renewable, safe, and clean sources of energy. Go back to Germany. Germany is a cloudy country the size of New Mexico, and it has 6 times the solar capacity as the United States of America. New Jersey has more solar capacity than Florida, we in the Sunshine State. Once again, you have the special interests, you have the oil companies who are dead set against this transition, and we need to move away from a fossil fuel-based economy, and we need to transition into a renewable economy, or we're going to be frogs in a pot. You know that analogy. You throw a frog in a pot of boiling water, he jumps out. You throw a frog in a pot of lukewarm water, turn up the temperature a degree at a time, frog soup. Well, we're frogs in a pot, and we better get wise to it. Taxation. The income tax, created in 1913. It was a 400-page document. It is now 74,000 pages. It is unwieldy, it is unfair, it is unworkable. The IRS itself says that we have an income tax gap of 15%, meaning there's a difference between what they say they should be getting every year and what they actually get. We lose $300 to $500 billion a year through tax avoidance, another $150 billion a year through tax evasion. Let's get rid of the income tax. Let's give back to the American people 480 billion hours of man hours of work and $6.1 billion of expenses filling out the endless forms of the income tax every year. Let's go to a national sales tax that will replace the income tax, the excise taxes, Social Security taxes, all those other taxes. It's fair, it's easily implemented, we do it on a state level, we can do it on a national level, you cannot avoid it. Let's tax consumption and not tax income. I would add 2 more taxes to that. We need a carbon tax in order to help transition and away from a fossil fuel economy, and I would reimpose a financial transaction tax of 0.5%. This country had a financial transaction tax between 1914 and 1966. You tax stock transfers, credit default swaps, options, all of the things that made Wall Street run wild in 2008 and crashed our economy. You'll make $350 billion to put it back in the economy. You'll slow down the runaway trading that caused the Great Recession, and it's fair. Right now, you have in this year, the top 1% earns 24% of the income in this country. In 1970, the top 1% only earned 9%. Wealth inequality is a real problem, and it's getting worse. We have one of the most disparate societies on the face of the earth between the wealthy and the rest of us. The top 30 people in America own more wealth than the bottom 50%. That's 30 against 159 million. That's insane. That's crazy. We're headed for disaster. Any society that has that kind of disparity cannot remain safe and calm and peaceful for very long. John Kennedy once said, "Those who make peaceful evolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable."
And how do you attack wealth inequality? Do you just raise taxes on the wealthy, or how do you do it?
Well, as I said, I think we should tax consumption. I think we should get rid of the income tax. All of this fiddling around with tax rates going up and going down, and when the income tax was first created, it was 7 rates. At one point, it was 27 rates, and then it was 2 rates, and now it's 5 rates. You can tinker with the tax code all you want. There's always going to be loopholes. There's always going to be a way to hide money, to avoid money. Right now, there's between, 22 and $32 trillion held offshore. Let's bring that money back. Let's give these corporations the buy. Let them bring the money back. Let them invest it in the economy. Let's tax consumption with a sales tax so that everybody pays their fair share. The rich will pay more. Obviously, you have to have some sort of floor in there for people with lower means. But I don't think we should tinker with the income tax code anymore. I think we should scrap it.
Yet one of the critiques of the national sales tax is even if the rich pay more overall, the middle class and the poor will pay a greater share of their income in taxes than the rich do.
That's a critique that that's an opinion. Economists have different opinions. Since we've never done it, and we've never done it in the right way, I don't see how they know. It's a valid opinion, but it's an opinion. It's not a fact. It's not borne out. One last thing, the minimum wage, okay? The minimum wage needs to be raised. Last time it was raised was 2009. It is now $7.25. The highest buying power of the minimum wage in this country was in 1968, $10.56. We have 3.7 million Americans who are earning the minimum wage or below, but we have 30 million Americans who are earning less than $10.56, which was the buying power of the wage in 1968. We need to raise the minimum wage. This has always been a bipartisan issue. Now all of a sudden it's become very partisan because the president wants to do it and the Republicans don't want to do anything that the president wants to do. We need to raise the minimum wage for a lot of reasons. First of all, if you raise the minimum wage, you're going to put $40 billion into the pockets of people who will spend it into the economy. That will create jobs. There are studies that show that within 3 years you can literally create 140,000 jobs because the demand for goods and services will rise because people have more spending. The argument against the minimum wage is that, small businesses are going to have to pay more. The vast majority of people making the minimum wage work for the 3 major corporations, the Yum Corporation, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, McDonald's, and Walmart. All of these companies are profitable. They're making more money now than they made before the Great Recession. They can well afford to pay living wage to people. The other argument against the minimum wage, these are just college kids, they're working for the summer. That's not true. The vast majority of people making minimum wage jobs are in their 20s and 30s. 2/3 of them are women. Many of them have children, and they need to make a living wage. Washington State has the highest working minimum wage in the country, and it has the best economy right now of any of the states. Finally, there's a selfish reason to raise the minimum wage. We as Americans are paying for Medicaid and food stamps and for all the government programs that minimum wage workers take advantage of because they live below the poverty level. We should not be paying that. The Waltons should be paying that. They can afford it. We need to raise the minimum wage in this country, and it needs to be a nonpartisan issue. It's the fair thing to do, it's the right thing to do, and it's the economically intelligent thing to do.
The Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan entity, in a report earlier this year, projected that raising the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour, which is what President Obama has proposed, would cost 500,000 jobs.
Again, it's an opinion, and I don't agree with it. I think when you raise the minimum wage and you put the money back in the pockets of people who are going to spend it, other studies have said that it'll raise the GDP over the course of several years by $25 billion, and it'll actually create hundreds of thousands of jobs. So again, there is disagreement, but there is absolutely no empirical, scientific, or academic evidence that anybody can ever point to where a minimum wage raise has impacted employment. I have studied this issue. I have tried to find information that suggests that, and all I have found is studies that prove that raising the minimum wage has never impacted employment, either in the areas where it happened or in areas, cities, municipalities, counties, close to it. It does not impact employment. As a matter of fact, when you raise the minimum wage, you actually save money for some of these employers because the turnover goes down. People stay in their jobs longer. Companies invest more in their worker training. Raising the minimum wage has always been, since 1938, when the first minimum wage was enacted, raising the minimum wage in this country has always showed good dividends. Why all of a sudden is it a problem? Because it's become a political issue between the Republicans and the president. That's all. It's not an economic issue at all. It's pure politics. And people like my opponent, Mr. Mica, doesn't believe in raising the minimum wage because he doesn't believe in doing anything that goes against what this president wants.
Mr. Krulick, you've outlined a number of issues here, but the fact of the matter is that the constituents of District 7 would be the ones who would be putting you into office.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, what's the most important thing you could accomplish to benefit the constituents of District 7?
The most important thing? I think everything that I talked about is important. Campaign finance reform is something I didn't mention, but we need to reform our campaign finance system. I did mention, I'm sorry, get the money out of politics. We need to do something about climate change and global warming. That saves the people of my district, the people of my country, and the people of my planet. We should raise the minimum wage. Look, the minimum, 91% of Democrats, 74% of independents, and even 50% of the Republicans in this country believe in raising the minimum wage. You know, we have a Congress that simply does not respond to the will of the people. Look what happened 2 years ago after that madman killed 20 kids in Newtown, Connecticut. 90% of the American people said that we need to increase our gun control laws, get the automatic weapons out of the hands of people, and restrict the size of magazines. And what happened? The Senate did not vote on that. Why? Because the Senate was threatened by the NRA. We no longer have a democracy in this country. We have a corporatocracy and an oligarchy. We have a government that is run by the rich and powerful special interests. What can I give to the people of my district? Their democracy back.
I wonder how you feel about some of the things that Congressman Mica touts as his accomplishments for the district or for Central Florida.
Such as?
Sunrail. Let me go through the list before you get to it. Sunrail, the upgrading of I-4, the expansion of Orlando International Airport, upgrades and improvements at Orlando Sanford Airport.
Okay.
The Orlando Veterans Hospital.
And that's a big one. I give John credit for certain things, but they're always a mixed blessing. I believe in mass transit, but I think Sunrail's a boondoggle. Right now, you only have 3,000 riderships per day, and that translates into 1,500 people. We're spending billions of dollars to transport 1,500 people up and down the corridor. Listen, when the federal money runs out for Sunrail, and the counties and the cities are going to have to foot the bill, there's going to be a lot of finger pointing and a lot of anger. And the politicians who put Sunrail in place are going to be long gone. Sunrail's the kind of showy thing that politicians love to say and put in front of people, but when the bill has to be paid, there's going to be a lot of anger. I give John credit for taking care of veterans. But let me tell you something. Some people come to me on the street and they ask me what to do about veterans. You know what I think? I think in order to take care of veterans, we need to make less of them. Obviously, we have to take care of the ones that we have, but let's make less veterans. Let's make less veterans by making less war. If you create less veterans, you need to take care of less people. So when, on the one hand, John is to be complimented for taking care of the veterans and increasing the size of the veterans' hospitals, and obviously we need to do that. You know, voting for foreign wars that we have no business fighting, that's what creates veterans. So let's solve the problem before it starts. We have no business anymore in the Middle East.
So should we assume that if you were elected and the question of whether or not Congress would support or on the question of approval, congressional approval for military action in Syria and Iraq right now against the so-called Islamic State, you would oppose that?
Well, first of all, I would oppose, what did you just call it, an approval?
Yes.
Okay, the Constitution says that Congress has to declare war. The first thing I would do is I would make sure that Congress has an up and down vote declaring war, because they've abrogated their constitutional responsibility for years. Okay? And then if they actually would have a vote, which I don't think they would do because I don't think they want their fingerprints on the important issues of the day, because I think they're afraid, because they like to go back to their districts and run for re-election without having to have the messy things on their record, I would ask for a declaration of war, and then I would vote against a declaration of war. So right now Congress says, we'll give the president the approval to do whatever he wants. And then of course he does what he wants, and then they can criticize him. It's a cynical game. We cannot kill our way out of these problems. We cannot do it. The Malala, the young girl who just won the Nobel Prize, says, you want to solve the problem? Send books instead of guns. Send teachers instead of soldiers. We have to lead the world in the things that make the world a better place. And look what we've done in Afghanistan. We gave weapons to the Mujahideen, and then years later they became the Taliban, and we fought against them with weapons that we gave them. We're going to do the same thing in the Middle East. Who are these moderate Syrians that we want to arm with $500 million worth of weaponry? Who knows what they're going to do with that weapons? Right now, the weapons that ISIS have are some of the weapons that we left behind in our ill-considered war in Iraq. We're an empire that's falling apart because we have this endless war on terror, and we gin up the fear for the American people. And you have Lindsey Graham saying we have to fight them there, and they're going to come over here, and they're going to kill us all. What nonsense is that? These are internecine struggles. These are struggles that need to be dealt with within the Arab and Muslim community on the other side of the world. And what ISIS wants, we're giving them. We're just diving right in. We're diving right in so that we can be the great Satan again. We're giving them exactly what they want, and Congress is just going along with it because that's what Congress likes to do. But they won't do it officially.
What in your own background could you point to that should give voters in the district confidence that you're qualified to hold a seat in Congress?
Well, I'm qualified because the United States Constitution says I am. I'm 25 years old and I live in the district. Why am I qualified? I've lived here for 23 years. I've raised my kids here. I've been in the public and private sector. I've had different careers. I've been unemployed. I know what it's like to be on unemployment insurance. I mow my own lawn. I change the oil in my own car. I live a middle-class life. I struggle to pay the bills. I'm struggling to get my kids through college. I'm not a millionaire. Half of Congress right now are millionaires. Half of Congress does have no idea what it's like to live a normal middle-class life, struggling in America, especially after the Great Recession. I worked for the Census Bureau in 2010. I went from door to door. I saw the empty houses. I saw the men in the pajamas in the middle of the day without work. I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to live a life. I know what it's like to be in this district as a normal working-class person. And I think that the people of our district deserve to be represented by someone who understands their struggles, understands their lives. Not a millionaire who's been reelected 11 times and is now looking to waltz through another term, but doesn't have the courage to show up to this interview.
And you have been in the past registered as a Democrat.
Correct.
You ran for office before as a Democrat.
Correct.
Why did you decide to run under no party affiliation in this race? Because
the two-party duopoly that controls this country has decided that either you're a Democrat or Republican or you're absolutely nothing. 25% of the people in my district are registered as NPAs. It is the fastest growing registration in our country. Between 2010 and 2014, over 546,000 new registered voters in Florida. 78% of them declined to be registered as an R&D. I'm just riding the wave. In addition, the Democratic Party made it clear to me that they were riding this race off. That there was absolutely no chance to beat John Mica, even though President Obama got 47% in 2012 and 49% of this district in 2008. So I wasn't going to get any help from the Democratic Party. I wasn't going to get any help from the local Democrats. And I decided I wanted to talk to the people. And if you go out on the street, like I do all the time, and I talk to people all the time, and the first question they ask me, what's your party? When I tell them I don't have a party, we have conversations because the wall doesn't come down. I didn't want to run as a Democrat because I didn't want to just talk to Democrats for 6 months up until the primary and not be able to talk to people. When I tell them I'm an NPA, their eyes brighten and light up. They are tired of partisan politics. They are tired of the bickering. They are tired of the duopoly that controls the vote. Look, gentlemen, we all know why I'm here. I'm not here because you invited me, because you thought that I should be here to talk about my stance as an NPA. You didn't want to invite me because I wasn't a Democrat or a Republican. But since the young Democrat dropped out of the race, you decided that you should invite me. And now that my Republican incumbent has dropped out of the interview, I'm the only guy left standing.
Any more questions?
No, I think we've covered all the ground. And,
Okay.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.